also of the Federal Communications Bar Association New York chapter, which I think is a nominal partner sponsor in this. So, but ISOC and everyone else gets all the credit. I shoehorned my way into a speaking slot, I guess, somehow. But it's good to be here. I guess a key takeaway, for me at least, in hearing from especially all the folks working here in the city, is that New Yorkers just get shit done when it comes to these issues. I know a lot of progress still remains to be done, but there's just so much going on, and it's really inspiring to always hear. I intentionally used a curse word because my mentor, who I started working with to start my career, Gail Brewer, is never one to hold back when it comes to those sorts of words. Not that she's great in so many ways. So I started my career working for her on all these issues, and I got to meet people like Bruce and Joe and Josh, who was here earlier. Somebody mentioned the Broadband Advisory Committee before. I heard someone saying, I remember working on that legislation when I was at the council with Gail. So these types of conversations have been ongoing for a long time. So many different things have been happening in different parts of the city, but it seems like there's more happening now. And one of the issues that I'm focused on here in New York, for as much as I love working on the wonky regulatory issues like Bruce was talking about before, net neutrality, all the fun stuff, here in New York City, my passion project has been trying to work with the array of groups I've met over the years who are working on the ground to bring people to the internet and to get them online. Again, in my work with the city before and ever since in my sort of research capacity at New York Law School, I've had the opportunity to meet so many groups, Silicon Harlem, but also groups that work in schools, training students, working with senior citizens, working to connect the older adults. And there's just this rich array of community groups and nonprofits that are really doing the hard work of trying to bring people online. It's either if it's actually building networks to bring people online, or working in a very hands-on way, tailored way with the unconnected to sort of show them the way and give them the skills to do that. And so one of the things I've been working on recently, and this ties into what Josh mentioned before, the city's RFI around kind of pulling together a broadband strategy, I guess, for lack of a better term. One of the things I've been working with an array of folks, Gail, Maya Wiley at the News School, Bruce at Silicon Harlem, and some others into this coalition that we're calling the Digital Equity, Adoption, and Literacy Deal Coalition, and trying to work with the city, the mayor's office, to make sure that these sort of demand side issues are part of the conversation going forward. And what I found most interesting to myself, and this is a great learning opportunity for me, is how even the folks who are building the networks recognize that's not enough just to build it. They're not going to come unless you actually go out and talk to them, train them, show why it's relevant, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's all these different things and approaches going on. The RISE approach is interesting with the Digital Stewards program, the nonprofit groups that I've known for a while and have been working with. Again, have a very more traditional educational digital skills training approach. So what we've been trying to do through this coalition is trying to offer the city ideas in terms of trying to come up with some sort of, I guess, grander vision for pulling all these, or trying to knit all these different approaches together and figuring out a framework, I guess, for leveraging all that's happening in the city at a very grassroots level to inform larger policy initiatives at the city level. So, for example, working with these groups in the communities to gather data about who's online, who's not online, why they're not online, because so much of the data that's been used so far, I think in that Truth NYC, Truth in Broadband report, it's census data, it's FCC data that's outdated in a lot of ways. It's never really that granular. But working in the communities with community groups, potentially you can get that sort of very hands-on data about what's working, what's not. And I'm sure what's working in or not working in Harlem is probably different from what's working and not working out in Brooklyn, Queens, et cetera. So I don't think we want the city having a master blueprint for everything, because as was mentioned, there's no one size fits all for these issues, but coming up with a way to, again, kind of have a citywide vision, looking across all these different programs and figuring out ways to, again, tap into what's going on the ground, but also supporting them in very targeted ways through either channeling city funds, working together corporate or philanthropic funds through the mayor's fund for public-private partnerships, creating other novel partnerships. So again, putting the weight of the city behind these issues, which get overlooked a lot on the demand side, and making sure that they have the same presence as when we're talking about issues on the supply side as well. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I always like learning and hearing about what's been going on here in New York City. I always feel like I'm learning something new, and I'm sure that for every person that's here today, there are five other people in communities across the city that are doing interesting things. So hopefully, if folks are interested in trying to work together on these issues as part of the RFI process or more generally, let me know. We can join the coalition that we're trying to build and get as many voices on that as possible. So thank you. Okay.
I've heard a rumor that a lot of the franchises are up in 2019. You used the word leverage, and also, Bruce has got a lot of shit. Some of it could maybe stick at the wall, to open the pipes, which is what he's saying, to give community. What do you think? Is there any way that this can happen, or when will the broadband plan come out in time to make that kind of thing happen?
Oh, well, I'm not going to speak. I don't know about the city's broadband efforts. You can ask Josh that over email, I guess. But I think the franchises are up in 2020. I've heard at the New School event that Greta organized and co-hosted a couple months ago, that was a big issue around the franchises and what the city can or cannot do and what it should or should not do. It's an interesting issue in a lot of ways, because I think there's lots of dynamics and forces in play, certainly. If 2020 is a presidential election, so if the current administration stays on and the city does something that conflicts with what the FCC, I know, right? No, anything could happen. You never know. So if the current administration stays in place and the same policies stay in place, and the FCC has made clear that they have a very national vision for broadband issues, so whether they were to intervene to say if the city tried to do one thing that conflicted with the FCC's vision, whether they would intervene. Of course, if there's another administration coming in with a different approach, certainly there's possibility that nothing would happen. But from the perspective of actually what the city could or could not do with the franchises, again, I think there's it's almost uncharted territories in a lot of ways. Especially, I've heard different ideas being pitched around about what the city might ask for around certain things, and it's a negotiating process. So if a company is very eager to extend their franchise and they want to stay in New York, then it's a negotiation. So you can come up with terms that they could voluntarily agree to. Whether the city can impose things on a company, I don't know if that would stick in court. What's interesting is, going back to net neutrality issues, that so much of this was actually launched by in the late 90s around the open access debate, when localities tried to impose open access obligations on cable companies, and that kind of launched this whole cycle, a never-ending cycle of net neutrality. What should and should not happen. But from a purely academic standpoint, it'd be an interesting kind of full circle-ness of going back to those sorts of issues. But I can't see the future, and I'm sure the city will try to do many different things, and whether they stick, I don't know.
Yeah, just on franchising, I do think this is an opportunity for us all to be working on it right now. So I would invite, this coalition that's in formation. The Digital Equity Laboratory is very interested in working. Maya Wiley is already a member of this coalition. And so what we need to do in order for the city to have any kind of leveraging position in terms of the franchising, it's all of the cable franchises are up in 2020. We need to start building political pressure right now. And that means looking at all the side letters from the last cable franchise agreements and all the community benefits that were built into those side letters and thinking about what our communities need and coming together to start to make those demands. Ultimately, both the borough presidents and the city council have to sign off. So we have a lot of opportunities to do things locally that build up from the bottom up to pressure the incumbents to, do some things that are good for communities. So we'll be talking more about franchise negotiations and how everybody can get involved. I'm just saying you're going to, Michael. Sorry, I don't know if you are.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
All right. Well, thank you. And maybe it's time to get these slides off the backdrop.